What is editing? Put simply, film editing is the art of trimming raw footage, selecting shots and piecing them together in order to create sequences, which when combined create a final motion picture. However, there is a much deeper meaning to editing. Often referred to as the invisible art, an editor must work with the story, pacing, layers of images, dialogue, music and an actor's performance in order to convey a certain meaning, message or feel from a film. In the past, editing a film was a long process due to the fact that all cuts were done manually, meaning an editor would have to physically splice and glue footage with a machine in order to create a sequence. In the modern day, editors have access to software such as Avid, Final Cut and Premiere Pro, meaning the process is much quicker and all editing is done digitally. The history of editing. In-camera editing. In-camera editing is a technique where, instead of editing the shots in a film into sequence after shooting, the director shoots the film sequentially. Therefore, the film is already complete when it is developed. In-camera editing involves shooting footage sequentially so that there is no need for any editing post-production. This reduced costs greatly for filmmakers of the past, but with the introduction of digital editing, this is rendered obsolete. However, if the filmmaker should lack the technology, then in-camera editing may be the only option. Due to the fact that everything is filmed sequentially, if an actor is absent for filming, production must halt until they are available. Alfred Hitchcock and Jean-Luc Godard are two notable pioneers of in-camera editing. In-camera editing was used in films such as Rope and Breathless. The film Rope was shot in only 10 takes of varying length. This was due to the fact that at the time, 10 minutes was the maximum amount of film a film reel could hold. The Kuleshov effect. The Kuleshov effect is a montage experiment used by Soviet filmmaker Lev Kuleshov in the 1910s. It is a psychological phenomenon in which one image may be interpreted differently due to the image following it. As shown in the name, it was Lev Kuleshov that pioneered montage editing with the Kuleshov effect. From here, montage editing grew to use in Russia, with the Soviet Union believing it to be a powerful source of propaganda. The Kuleshov effect involves using editing in order to convey a message. The clips in sequence may not be sequential or make sense narratively, however do have an underlying message. Kuleshov shot actor Ivan Mozukin expressionless, and then made multiple edits with intermittent shots of other objects. For example, a plate of soup or a girl in a coffin. Audiences took different interpretations of Mozukin's emotions, suggesting hunger when shown the soup, or suggesting sadness when put next to the coffin, despite the same footage being used for the two separate edits. This showed that the way footage was edited together could determine the reading the audience took. Soviet montage editing. Soviet montage theory is the idea that cinema relies heavily upon editing. It is the principal contribution of Soviet film theorists to global cinema and brought formalism to bear on filmmaking. The Soviets believed that montage editing was an extremely useful tool in sending a political message and extremely effective as propaganda. This is due to their ability to provoke emotions. Eisenstein even regarded cinema as a factor for exercising emotional influence over the masses. As a result, the Soviets adopted the technique, slightly tweaking it. Shots may now show a slight narrative or have some more sense to them. For example, an army could be shown charging up some stairs, whilst a group of civilians could be shown walking down them. This will convey a message of violence and brutality, as seen in Battleship Potemkin. Soviet montage editing was originally used by Sergei Eisenstein. Soon after, montage editing grew to America, particularly Hollywood. Hollywood montage editing. Montage is a technique in film editing in which a series of shots are edited into a sequence, often over music or narration. Montages often signify the passing of time, space, or information. Hollywood montage editing is the most commonly used form of montage editing in the present day. Firstly coming into use in the 1980s, a commonly known montage would be the training sequence in one of the Rocky films. French New Wave editing. French New Wave films include non-naturalistic techniques such as long tracking shots and jump cuts. Also, these movies featured existential themes such as stressing the individual, in the acceptance of the absurdity of the human existence. Films often included great amounts of irony and sarcasm, often providing intertextual references. French New Wave editing was first used around the late 50s in an attempt to make cinema more artistic. French New Wave editing involves breaking all the rules of conventional editing in order to create an alternative piece of cinema. For example, a conversation may cut forward suddenly and skip certain lines, giving the impression it is going on for a long time. Essentially, French New Wave cinema is everything continuity editing is not. François Truffaut, Jean-Luc Godard, Éric Rohmer, Claude Chabrol, and Jacques Rivette are all auteurs that begun the French New Wave editing movement. As suggested by its name, it originated in France in the late 50s to the early 60s. New Wave work was still being produced until the mid-70s. When French New Wave editing begun, budget was low, and so often cuts had to be made to the final film. Jean-Luc Godard was told that his film Breathless was too long and that it needed to be cut down by an hour and a half. So in order to do so, he removed several scenes, creating jump cuts. It was this frugality that led French New Wave editing to creation. French New Wave editing gives directors a great artistic license, and it allows them to break conventional filmmaking patterns. Using transitions such as jump shots allow the film to cut right to the drama, rather than explaining the travelling. Broken up and improvised dialogue mean that the audience focus on the meaning of the conversation rather than the words. A French New Wave filmmaker shows us their own eye of the world. What is a classic Hollywood edit? Classic Hollywood editing, otherwise known as continuity editing, involves using a naturalistic style of edit in which cuts are unnoticeable or invisible. Some features of continuity editing may be the 180-degree rule. The 180-degree rule is an invisible axis which cannot be crossed in order to abide spatially to the continuity of a scene. By breaking the 180-degree rule, it may appear as if a character is facing the wrong direction, confusing or disorientating the audience. The 30-degree rule. The 30-degree rule is a rule that suggests a shot must be shot at least 30 degrees apart or the footage will look staggered and unnatural. In breaking the 30-degree rule, a jump cut is created. Straight cut. Straight cuts are featured in almost every film. It allows for the quick change between two shots without the need to see the completion of the previous shot. Without straight cuts, films would be very long. Match on action. Match on action shots involve cutting from a character interacting with something to the object that is being interacted with. This allows for the audience to see what is happening. Shot reverse shot. Shot reverse shot is a technique in which one character will look at another character who is likely to be off screen, which is preceded by the second character looking back at the first. This technique is often used in conversations between two characters. Editing can be used exclusively to create or change a dynamic within a scene. An example of this would be in the final sequence of Gladiator, in which the protagonist